This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. Allison Goldberg here with Consolidated Planning Group, and we are happy to be partnering with the Southeast Texas Co-op. Their transition coordinator, Benicia Bindeli. Did I do it right?
Bindeli.
I did. Bindeli. Okay, it was close and not quite. Sorry about that. So we're happy to be partnering with them, and we are partnering again with attorney Michele Goldberg today. And so today, a couple of things. We're going to talk about a few housekeeping items. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you're typically attend webinars with us, we're glad you're back. We always hope that these webinars are meaningful. And I always talk about like the 3 nuggets. Like I hope that you get 1 to 3 nuggets out of this hour that you spend with us that you can take and be smarter for in your advocacy for your loved one with special needs. Something that you can take and implement as you're planning. So from webinar perspective, you guys are in webinar. So in case you're wondering, we cannot see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. Today, the meeting is being recorded. We do want to take as many questions as we can. We'll take them throughout. Benicia's going to be looking at the chat box. We want you to put your questions in the chat box, and she'll be reading those out to us today. So don't be shy. If you have a question, probably somebody else does too. So ask those good questions. We learn a lot from them, and usually the presentations are better because of some of the questions that get asked. So today's meeting is being recorded. You will get a copy of the slides later this afternoon. You'll get an email with a copy of the slides and a link for the recording. So usually that question comes up, and I like to tell people that so you just know that you don't have to take every single note of everything that you learn, because you are going to get a copy of those slides. So Michele, we are talking about 4 things you need to know about protecting your child with special needs. And this topic is, fast and furious, and there's a lot of things that we're going to be touching on, and we won't be able to kind of delve, as deeply as possible into each one of those topics. But you're going to be able to, walk away from this presentation with 4 things that you really need to know, and maybe get some clarity to some of those answers. And as always, when it comes to Michele, we've got to have a little bit of a disclaimer here, and she's not going to bore you with reading that out, but I think legally you have to put that out there. Is that right, Michele?
Yes, and I want to put it out there.
Yes, for sure. So as we get started, we're talking about, what is Medicaid and why is it important? Michele, I have people that, come to us all the time and they say, what do I need Medicaid for? I have private insurance. Or we have enough assets, or we plan to fund care for our loved one. Why should we make our child Medicaid eligible? So talk to us a little bit about that, Michele.
Yes, I encourage, as you know, Allison, I have a big focus. I'm a probate attorney, so I'm general probate, but a big focus of my practice is what I call long-term special needs planning, which is like why I like to pair with you, because that's what you're doing from a different angle. But I encourage all of my clients to make their child eligible for Medicaid. You have to apply for SSI. We'll talk about that a little bit later to get the Medicaid. But Medicaid is your comprehensive medical insurance that's totally free. You can have the Medicaid and not use it. Once your child has gotten it, has qualified and has it, it doesn't go away from non-use. It can just sit there. So you can use the Medicaid if your child is medically frail or on a lot of medications, for example. Private insurance is the primary and the Medicaid is the copay. But Medicaid has other uses. It's not only comprehensive medical insurance, it also pays for a lot of programs when your child is done with special education. And some of the really, really good sheltered workshops and other day programs are covered by Medicaid. So if the program is a Medicaid certified program and your child is on Medicaid, then the program can bill for your child's participation. So your child needs to be on Medicaid to get that advantage for these programs, and that can be good for your long-term planning. Another real benefit of Medicaid is Medicaid pays for a lot of housing. Not all housing, and I don't know the age range of the families that are participating today. It might be too far in the future to think about, but when you think of long-term planning, 20, 30, 40 years from now, and your child, maybe you're not here, you're setting things up so your other children can take over for your special needs child, or somebody else in the trust can. Just know that there's a lot of really, really good housing, group homes, other sorts of facilities that are covered by Medicaid. And just quickly how that works, if your child is receiving Social Security benefits, and we're going to get to that, Social Security benefits, those benefits are paid to the residential facility each month, and then the facility can bill Medicaid for the difference. So it's a really valuable government benefit, and it's covered by our tax dollars. You're paying taxes, and it's for our special needs people.
Well, one thing, Michele, that we know is Medicaid is always the last payer. So, you know, as you know, we've actually seen families that have a kid that has Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance. So we've seen them have all three. We've seen them have Medicaid and Medicare, and Medicaid's always the last payer. But for some families, one of the values of Medicaid, so they may not like the providers that are in network with Medicaid, but like most of the major hospitals are, in network with Medicaid. But a lot of times what happens is Medicaid can kind of swoon in and pay that large deductible on your private health plan or your group health plan. So that's something that we see as well. And we're going to talk more about the waivers in the state of Texas, but all of the waivers in the state of Texas are Medicaid waivers, so you do have to maintain your Medicaid eligibility for those. So that is kind of the reason why. And we do get that question, of if I don't like Medicaid or if I don't want Medicaid, if I do have private health insurance, why do I still need this? And the thing is, one thing that you said, Michele, is, 20 or 30 years from now, we're not here anymore. Things change. You may have a group health plan for your loved one right now, and your group health plan may allow your loved one with a disability to stay on your plan past age 26, which is the current law. But that may end upon retirement or, no longer being employed or what have you. And so, having that kind of backup coverage is also important. And what I would say, I've been in this business for 30 years, and I've seen the laws change many times over the last 30 years for healthcare. And so as those laws change, you want to, be fluid, with that as well. So, Michele, you were talking about benefits through the Social Security Administration. So today we're going to be talking about what they are, how to access them, how to maintain eligibility for your child not to lose them. And one big thing is knowing the difference between SSI and Medicaid versus SSDI or RSDI, Social Security and Medicare, because a lot of times families will say, my child's getting Social Security benefits, when the reality of it is, now, some people do. Some of our kids do get Social Security benefits. They've worked, or maybe you're retired or disabled yourself and they're getting those benefits. But a lot of the time, especially when they're, turning 18 or whatever, and you haven't retired or become disabled, they're actually getting SSI and Medicaid. Have you seen confusion with the terminology on that, Michele?
I have seen so much confusion with the terminology, and I've seen confusion, even other attorneys that are referring to me that may work in a related area, they'll get Medicaid and Medicare confused. So would this be a good time, Allison, to explain the difference?
Yes, let me see if it's the next slide, and I think we'll go. Let me just kind of come over to that. It's way down here. So actually, we're going to come back to that, and I think we'll just stay the plan and kind of talking about some of the waivers that we're going to talk about. So one of the things, the ways that we're going to preserve our eligibility, because the bottom line with SSI is a means-based program, right, Michele? It's assets of $2,000 or less and disabled, right? And so a lot of the questions that we get is, Where else can I have money? How much money can I have, and where can it be? So tell us a little bit about the differences of the special needs trust. So we know that that's one place that you can have money that will not disqualify you from SSI and Medicaid. But I guess there's some differences between a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust. Can you explain the differences to us?
Yes, so the government's policy is, and we'll get back to it in more detail when we speak about the different Social Security benefits packages, but the government's policy for people who have a disability and because of the disability will not be able to support themselves through work. That's key. A lot of people have disabilities and can work and support themselves, but if you have a disability and you can't work enough to support yourself, then you can be eligible for these government benefits. And when Allison talks about there being means tested, government's policy is we'll give you a benefits package, this particular benefits package, on condition that your income this year is not more than, is it $841 a month, Allison? $841 a month. Or is it $800?
Well, yes. Right now, the benefit for SSI is $841 a month, but the substantial gainful amount for 2022 is $1,350 gross earnings per month. So basically, you don't, if the individual is working, as long as they're making less than $1,350 gross earnings per month, then they still have the possibility of being approved for SSI and Medicaid. So that's at the month of the application. So the substantial gainful amount is $1,350 gross per month. But I think it's important to note here, Michele, that at the point that your loved one has earned more than $1,350 gross per month, they lose the ability to be considered a disabled adult child under a parent's record. So we're going to talk more about that, but our kids with disabilities whose disability started prior to age 22, they have the ability to be covered under a parent's record, okay? Because our kids, for Social Security, we work and we pay into the system, and if we have kids that aren't going to work or going to work a limited amount of, they're really not paying into the system. So later for retirement, they're not going to have a benefit. Well, the Social Security system says, yes, they will, because we're going to cover them under your work record. But a parent can accidentally mess this up in the event that their loved one made more than the $1,350 gross per month prior to applying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, and that makes sense, and that's getting to some fine tuning here. So just to explain the difference, and that's really essential, and we'll get back to that because that's an essential point.
For sure.
To discuss the difference between the special needs trust and what a special needs trust is that to qualify for the benefits, your child cannot have more than, and thank you for giving me the number because I didn't know it, cannot have more than $1,352 a month in gross income, that's money coming in, and not more than $2,000 a month in assets, combined all accounts, that's money sitting out there in accounts. So it could be savings bonds, I don't know if anybody bothers with those anymore, but UTMA accounts, the savings accounts, any kind of account. 529 plans are not included in that, that's always a question we get. But so that's what when Allison refers to as a means tested, that's what we mean by means. Your child, in order to qualify for the government benefits, has to be essentially indigent on his own. It doesn't matter what you have. Your now over the age of 18 child has to be indigent on his or her own, and then the government defines indigency by the gross earnings of $1,352, no more, and no more than $2,000 in assets. At the same time, the government says, you can have a pot of money for your child without a cap on it, at least not in the state of Texas, without a cap on it, and to give your child the quality of life things, to pay for care attendance, to pay for vacations, for cultural events, educational things, for a cell phone, for TV, for a super-duper wheelchair if you need that, to pay for vacations, all the things that give any kind of medical treatments that Medicaid and your private insurance won't cover, so any kind of therapies. So all the things that we call quality of life things can be provided, and the government wants you to provide for it, provide it, on condition. It's structured in this thing called a special needs trust. The attorney prepares the document, which are the special needs trust document, which are the instructions of how the money is to be managed. And there's a huge difference, and I know Allison and I have talked about this, where we see a lot of mistakes is a lot of attorneys don't work in this area regularly, and they mix up the terms. And in a legal document, if one word is off, it can change the meaning. It's very important that you know the terms, because there's a first-person trust and a third-person trust. And how do you decide which kind of trust to put it in? It's the Social Security Administration has the regulations that rule all this, that govern all this, and the Social Security Administration looks at the source of the money. So when we're doing estate planning, or when you're working with Allison to do your long-term financial plan, you want a third-party trust. You set up the trust with your money. You're the third party, even if you're the parent, even if you're the grandparent. The money goes directly into the trust for the benefit of your special needs person. The trust has to be in place for your special needs child's life. Then you name the remainder beneficiaries. Who gets the money when your child has died? So it's your money. You determine the history of the money, how it's used for your child while your child's alive, as long as it complies with Social Security regulations, and then you name the remainder beneficiaries. That's when you're setting up the trust, or your parents, or it comes from what's called a third party. This payback trust is what we call a first-party trust. It's money that was your child's in the first place. So a lot of kids are disabled because of a car wreck or medical malpractice claim. There's a lawsuit settlement. The proceeds from the lawsuit settlement are classified as first person. That's your child's own money. Or it could be a direct inheritance because nobody did their planning and your child gets money directly. That has to go into a first-person trust because it's your child's money.
Let's take a pause. I want to take a pause on that, Michele, because it's a big deal. Where she was just talking about nobody did planning, this is also an example of where a financial advisor advised you wrong and allowed somebody to name your child directly as a beneficiary. So there's a right way and a wrong way, and we see this all the time. It's easily fixed. You can do it for free on your own by getting a change of beneficiary. But what we don't want to do is name your loved one with a disability directly as their name. If their name is John Smith, we do not want to name John Smith as a beneficiary on anything we have. We want it to be for the third party or the supplemental needs trust for the benefit of John Smith. Then the money goes into the trust. If John Smith gets it directly, you're going to have to work with an attorney and get a court order to have it directed into a first-party trust, and there is a Medicaid payback on that, whereas if we just set it up correctly the first time into a third-party special needs trust, you avoid the Medicaid payback. Is that correct, Michele?
That is absolutely correct. So just to add a couple sentences onto that, what the Medicaid payback trust, and I'm adding on, Allison, because I hear misconceptions about it, even from other lawyers. That Medicaid payback trust says that all special needs trusts have to be in place for the life of your child, which is probably what you want anyway, because they probably need help managing the money. But upon the child's death, if it was a first-party trust, then Medicaid has to be notified, and Medicaid can put a claim for reimbursement on the trust for all money that Medicaid has spent on medicals for your child. Well, sometimes let's say you get money from a lawsuit settlement, it's worth it because you've got the money. You can use the money. It's not frozen. You can use the money to pay for a full-time nanny, to pay for accommodations in the house, to get a better quality wheelchair, to pay for whatever it is you need for your child, the special therapies, and also for vacations and the more fun things. But on your child's death, Medicaid has to be notified, and they will make a claim for reimbursement. And then if there's money left in the trust after Medicaid has been reimbursed, then you name your remainder beneficiaries, maybe your other children or a niece or a charity. But and sometimes you have no choice. You have to do the Medicaid payback. But with proper planning, then you can possibly avoid that.
Okay, gotcha. One thing I wanted to mention, Michelle, is we do have people, I mean, yes, we have people from Texas, but we have people that are from out of state as well. And so one thing that I wanted to mention is a lot of this webinar, and we are going to talk about Texas waivers, and you will be able to look up your state waivers. There are Medicaid waivers in every state, and some states are way better than Texas because some states don't have waiting lists, and our waiting lists are like 17 years, right? So anyway, but most of this webinar, when we're talking about SSI and Medicaid, SSDI and Medicare, we're talking about special needs trust. It's kind of universal from across the U.S. as far as those benefits are concerned and maintaining the eligibility. So I just wanted to mention, in case somebody is from out of state and they're thinking if this is going to be a waste of their time or not, most of the stuff is going to be relevant wherever you are in the U.S. It's just the specific waivers that you'll have to get more details for your specific state. We've had a few questions. Benicia, do you want to hit the highlights on any of them?
There's the first one's just asking if there's a certificate when after the meeting.
We have not. I mean, we can provide an email. This is not CE eligible. We were going to look into that. We haven't looked into that further. I know it's relatively easy to set up, but we can submit an email. I mean, if that would be enough. I'm not sure what you need, but you can reach out to us directly for that. And then I see someone say, "Can you explain Medicare?" We are going to talk about that a little bit further. And then I see somebody that said that they're out of state. And Michelle, if you have anything to add, they were wondering about an attorney referral for the DC area. And I talked about the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys and also the Academy of Special Needs Planner by their website are two areas that I've seen decent referrals. Do you have any other recommendation if somebody's looking for an attorney in their state?
That's what I would do. I'm a member of NALA, National Academy for Elder Law Attorneys, and I let it lapse, but I'm a member of I was a member of the Special Needs Planners. Those are attorneys that focus on these areas. I would go with those.
Yes, I agree. And then you said something earlier, and I just want to say, because, I'm not an attorney, I'm the financial side. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but I cannot convey enough how important it is that you do work with a specialist. Your situation is specialized. Do work with a specialist, not a generalist when it comes to planning for special needs, because when you work with a generalist, your neighbor that does real estate and dabbles and, whatever, in special needs, that's where we see some real problems. Or, you end up saving money, but then you end up paying a lot more because the other attorney has to come in and undo everything. So it's an issue. So Medicaid waiver programs, what are they and how do you access them? And the funny thing that happens in Texas is that people are like, are you on the list? Are you on the interest list? Are you on the waiting list? Those are all terms that we hear like all the time here. And the interesting thing is I would say that at least 50% of the people don't even know. I mean, they don't even know what the list is for exactly. We know that, like, if you have a disability, you should be on the list, this ever ominous list. But what the lists are is the waiver interest list in the state of Texas. And what are these waivers anyway? Like, it's confusing in itself. The waivers are designed to waive off some of the cost of care for an individual with a disability in hopes of providing them home and community-based services. Okay, that's basically what the waivers are for. All states have waivers. A lot of their waivers are different. They're similar. They might be called something different, and they're, under kind of an umbrella of the law, right, through Medicaid, but they may be called something different. So this is where, if you're out of state, you're going to want to check your state for these. And so you could Google Medicaid waivers. Sometimes they're going to be you'll find more information possibly through the ARC. Sometimes you'll find more information on the state waivers through various state websites. It could be Health and Human Services, any number of organizations. But if you just go in and type in Medicaid waivers for the state of whatever state you're in, I've never typed that in and not found what the waivers were. So I think that's a good start. So the Texas Medicaid home and community-based services, this is just a list of them. And what I would like to say is for the Texas folks, we have an entire webinar that is dedicated to waivers in the state of Texas, who they serve, what they are, what they do. We have a spreadsheet for the budgets. All of these different waivers have different budgets. Some, may have a smaller budget in the 40,000 range. We've seen, depending on the level of the need of the individual, we've seen budgets as high as 370,000 a year. So this is that question where you're scratching your head of why should I even care about Medicaid? Some of these waivers are huge. They might provide, so let's give some examples of home and community-based service. They might provide attendant care services, respite care services, and I basically always say whatever type of therapy you can dream up in your head, a lot of times it covers that. It could be equine therapy, music therapy, massage therapy, feeding therapy. I mean, you just OT, PT, all the typical ones that you've heard of. But there's all kinds of other, like extracurricular kind of fun activities of therapy that they often uncover as well. So one thing I just like to bring up, Texas gets a black eye for having a 17-year waiting list for our waivers. And it's not a joke, it's the truth. Like, it's almost laughable, it's so long. But there are such things as crisis diversion slots where a person, if they're a threat to themselves or others, if they're at risk of being placed outside of the home, it could be due to a loss of a caregiver, a death of a caregiver, an illness of a caregiver. It could be any number of things. The crisis diversion slot moves you to right now, and most states do have crisis diversion centers and crisis numbers and things like that. So do be aware of that. The other one that I would like to mention to you historically is that youth empowerment services is up to age 19, but this is kind of a mental health waiver in the state of Texas, and it's a wraparound program. And I know a lot of families are struggling with mental health issues since COVID. Some were struggling before, but it was kind of like on steroids since COVID. There is a yes waiver in the state of Texas. They used to not have a waiting list. And so think of I call it the alphabet soup. Michele, any of these diagnoses, BPD, ADHD, ODD, all of the mental health and depression, anxiety, if your kid has run away, if they have a drug issue, if they've been in trouble with the law, those are all examples of where this yes waiver is designed to work with the family, work with the youth person to keep them out of a residential facility in the future. So I saw a question, and so the wait list, how do we get on the wait list and what do we do? So, and this is going to be a link that you guys are going to get, but to find out who your local intellectual disability authority is, you're going to go to this website and you're going to put in your zip code, and it's going to tell you who your local authority is. So getting on the HCS Texas Home Living and Community First Choice waiver, you're going to contact the local authority. But Michele, what people do is they call that local authority and they think that they're on all the list, and they're not, because there are separate phone numbers for MDCP, class, and DBMD, and also a separate phone number for Star Plus. So I think it's important for families to understand that there are multiple phone numbers and multiple lists to get on. And if you only call your local intellectual disability authority, basically the only list that you are on is HCS, Texas Home Living, and Community First Choice. So, have you had families that you work with that are getting the waiver and the benefits that they have, received from the waiver, Michele? And can you talk to us a little bit more about some of the waivers?
Yeah, I have clients that come in that first of all, a lot of people don't know about it, so I appreciate your webinars and you're letting people know. I've had people come in my office that signed up and they knew, and I'll say, how did you know? A social worker at Texas Children's told me, or another parent told me. I have neighbors across the street with a son who's on the spectrum, and he's already 16 years old. They never heard of it. And they said, well, what do we need it for? I said, just sign up. When the time comes, if you don't want it, you can decline it, but sign up. But the kind of therapies some of my clients come in, and the parents tell me it's changed our lives. They have people that can come into your house for respite care and work with the child that's on the spectrum or has other disabilities while mom is busy making dinner with the other kids. They go to rhinotherapy, which I had to look that up. That's horseback riding therapy, the massage therapy if they've got some physical problems. I mean, it's all kinds of, they're really generous. And you mentioned earlier, one is only $40,000 worth of benefits a year. Well, that's $40,000 worth of benefits a year that's not out of your pocket directly. It's covered.
I think that's the key, and I think sometimes we also lose sight of, because we live right here, right now, and our lives are complicated, right? But we also lose sight of that when they're no longer in the school, in the public school, whether they stay into 21 or 22, now what? Now where do they go? Are they going to a transition program? How much does that cost? What are they doing in their lives daily or weekly to be fulfilled, to have community, to contribute, to have a job, whatever their capacity and abilities may be, to be, maximized. And so I think, that these waivers are important as a result of that. So someone asked about a county. And so your waivers are definitely by county. So for instance, like Houston, it's going to be Harris County. Sugar Land's going to be, Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County is going to be Texana, right? So they all have different local intellectual disability authorities. And for years, Michele, they called them MHMR. So if you've heard of MHMR, then they started changing up the names just when you got it all down. But the Harris Center replaced MHMR. So that's something to know. And when you move counties, one question that comes up all the time is, so let's say that I'm on the list in one county and I move to a different county. Then what happens? Well, you do get a new local authority, and you do need to call your new local authority. So if I move from Fort Bend to Harris, I need to move my from Texana to the Harris Center. But you don't lose your place in line, and you're not starting over in line. So just so you know that. And then one other thing that I want to mention on these wait lists, because this is an important thing to know, is that typically they reach out. We did see some disparity in that, over COVID, but typically they reach out twice a year to ask you, do you still want to be on the list? So let you know where you are on the list. And things like that. But you do need to respond. If you move, if you change addresses, change phone numbers, change emails, you need to let them know, because if they can't find you, they'll take you off the list. And one other thing I always like to mention here is, it's silly. I know we're a big, big state, and you would think that there is a website that you could just put yourself on the list, create a username and password, put your child on the list, and then log in and see where they are on the list. But that does not exist. You're not crazy. It does not exist. You do have to call your local authority and leave a message, and they will call you back, and they will get your child on the list. That is really how it works. It's an ineffective process in the state of Texas, but that is how it works right now, and you're not crazy. I have people ask all the time about that. If all the people in the state calling to get themselves on the list, it seems like we could do better than that. Any other questions, Benicia, for right now?
Yes, you may have touched on this. Do you provide it? Oh, it just jumped. It says, do you provide assistance in dealing with the Harris Center?
I personally am familiar with the Harris Center. We have a lot of good contacts at the Harris Center. And then we also have a lot of agency referrals that we can refer to as well, that also have good contacts. So if you're running into a problem, so it's not shocking if you're working with your local intellectual disability authority and you feel like you're hitting a brick wall, or you're not getting through, or they're not calling you back, or the representative is changing. They have had a lot of turnover since COVID. But if you're running into problems, yes, we can get some help for you. There are, you got to go through the normal sources first. But if that's not working and you need additional help, we do have some some referrals and some other places can definitely help you with that.
And you're going to be sending out the recording after the event?
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Perfect. And you address wait list is by county. It says, is respite only available once you get the benefit from the Medicaid waiver?
So I think that the answer is no on that, and that is going to be a Health and Human Services question. And then I think, you know, it also has to do with the LON. We love acronyms here, but the level of need of the individual, because I have seen people that are getting attendant services through Medicaid, but it has to do with the level of need and the assessments. They come out and they determine what the level of need is. There are a lot of services that are available through Medicaid that is specifically tailored to the individual specific level of need. So I think that's where, again, you know, the reigners on Medicaid. I'm not a huge fan. Like, my daughter has it. I have kids with disabilities, right? Okay. And she has, you know, she has multiple coverage and things like that. But Medicaid does cover things that insurance did not cover, such as, you know, covering, you know, swooning in and paying the deductibles and things. But when you have we have to understand that some parents that are here, their kids aren't on the spectrum. Their kids may have a trach. They may be on a ventilator. They may be full care, you know, 24/7, and their level of need is much greater than an individual that has intellectual disabilities or high functioning autism or things like that. So I think that understanding that kind of the degree of care that some people may be, you know, kind of be, you know, working with is for sure one of the differences.
And there are other very specific that we may want to wait till the end. Do you want me to read them there? Let's see, specifically about individual kids.
Let's come back to that, and then we'll come back to that in a moment. So, you know, one of the questions that we get all the time, Michelle, you know, people will call us and they're going to say, I need guardianship, or I need a special needs trust. And they probably call you and say, how much do I need to set aside for the future care? Or can you help us apply for SSI and Medicaid or things like that? And so when it comes to special needs planning, you know, I think it's important to understand the difference between a planner and an attorney. And I always like to summarize this very, very quickly. If you guys are the paper, the legal documents, and we're the money, right? So you got to fund. We have to fund the future care for our loved ones with a disability. And we have calls every week of, I know I need to plan for this, but I don't even know where to start. I don't even know. I couldn't even fathom how much money we need to set aside. I'm a little concerned about this because we have to plan for our retirement. We might be retired 25 to 35 years, and then we have to have this other tranche of money for this loved one after we're gone. And how do we do this? So that's what we do. We're the money side of it. We're the money in the right buckets. We're the National Social Security advisors. We can help you. And we're going to talk about resources too to help you on your journey. But where Michele comes in, and you know, an attorney comes in, this is where they're going to help you with all the legal documents. So we're thinking about, you know, whether or not a family needs guardianship post age 18 or some things like that. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but so we're talking about wills, trust, special needs trust, guardianship, power of attorney, and in Texas, there's a document called the supported decision-making agreement. Are those things that you are well-versed and can do all of those things?
Yes. And I don't know, Allison, do you think this is a good time before we dive further into these, just as the background? And I know I saw some questions pop up. People want to know the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Would this be a good time to just give a little brief overview of the different Social Security benefits?
Yeah, we're going to go right into that in just a moment. So I think we have a whole slide on that. We're going to spend some time on that because it's so confusing. We spend a little bit more time on that so that way it's clear for everybody that's kind of asking those questions.
So let me briefly address your question about preparing the documents. All attorneys will tell people you need a will, because if you don't have a will, then the state of Texas has one for you. Every state has one. We keep talking about Texas, but every state, if you die without a will, The state has what's called intestate succession, how your property will be distributed after your death. If you have a will, you can leave your money any way you want. You can distribute your assets as you want. And so you need an attorney to prepare these documents. Because if you don't have it, then your child will inherit. If you've done no planning yourself, then your child will directly inherit. And as we said earlier on, if your child directly inherits money, then he will no longer be, even if it's a minimal amount that he inherits, and then he'll lose his government benefits. And you don't want your son or daughter to lose the government benefits, period. You don't want them to lose them once they've qualified and get it, and they're getting them. And then you'll be gone. You're going to leave this mess, and I'm telling you, it'll be a mess for your other children or other loved ones to untangle and straighten out, so that your child with disabilities who's dependent and can't do it for himself can continue getting support, or as I call it, as we all call it, the safety net from the government with these government benefits. So you really need to do the planning, and you need to speak with an attorney that works in this area to make sure that the provisions are properly addressed and covered in the legal document.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and that's where some of the confusion lies, is like, what do we need both? And the answer is yes, you do need both. You know, the attorneys don't have the licenses and don't do what we do, and we don't do what they do, but we work very closely together. And then this is just also a perfect place, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. These legal documents are not a DIY project. This is not a download from the internet. That is a train wreck. You can do it, but it's not good. And so again, there's things that we can do DIY and they're good. And then there's other things that we can really know just enough to be dangerous. And I just cannot make that, suggestion enough of really truly work with a quality attorney to help you, get these documents in place. Another thing that we talk about, we have a whole webinar. We've got a YouTube channel. It's in our slides. We're gonna share the slides, not just the recording, but a copy of the slides today. And we have a whole, YouTube video on a letter of intent, but I call it also a family love letter. Like, as a parent with an individual with a disability, we have forgot more than anybody will ever know. So if we're incapacitated or we're dead, we can't convey that. So this letter of intent is everything to do about your loved one with a disability. Where were they born? What county? What are their diagnoses? What are their medications? Who are their doctors? What are their religious preferences? What schools do they attend? On and on and on it goes. But also there's a part in it where it gives you an opportunity to speak your heart and what your hope is and what your goals are. So, these are documents that somebody else could pick up and hopefully step in. They're never going to fill your shoes, but hopefully step in. And with as little disruption as possible, because they know what they need to know. They're not digging through a 3,000 square foot house to figure out the answers, little clues of things that they need to help your loved ones. So that's what the letter of intent is. But I think the big thing to planning is really also talking about and thinking about how you hope your future will look, not just your loved one with special needs. Parents don't have to be told to think more about their kids. They need to be told to think more about themselves and their own future and their own health. So definitely think about that. So, getting started with someone like you, Michele, I know we have entire webinars on guardianship and powers of attorney, but guardianship is something that comes up pretty regularly, especially if we have kids that are on the brink of transitioning. Maybe they've already turned 18. Can you just briefly tell us the different types of options for the state of Texas that we have for guardianship and alternatives?
Yeah, and it's pretty much the same in most states. Other states might call it conservatorship rather than guardianship, but it's the same thing. A guardian is someone who has full legal authority to make decisions for an adult. 18 is the age of emancipation across the United States. That's when our constitutional rights are invoked. And we don't even realize how many constitutional rights we use every day. We just think we do all this stuff. You have a bank account, a credit card, a mortgage, rent, a car note, sign your insurances, all your various insurances. You sign medical and dental consent. These are all contractual relationships, and those are guaranteed in the United States Constitution. And there's other freedoms that we have, or other rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution. One is we have freedom of movement. We can come and go once we're 18. We can leave home, we can come, go. But if you have a special needs child that can't make those sort of decisions for herself or himself and needs assistance, then you may need guardianship. But I always ask the parent, each child is different, as you know, and you can say somebody's on the spectrum, or somebody has Down syndrome, or somebody has this disorder or that chromosomal mutation, but there's still a range and they're still different. So I really, as an attorney, I need more information. How independent is your child? Will your child always be dependent? Can he really communicate directly with the doctor? Can he really communicate directly with the school for his planning activities? Could he advocate for himself in a job situation? And then the more I hear, then I'll say, I think you need full court authority, and that's a guardianship. And a guardianship, only a judge can appoint a guardian, and that's in all states. And it is a full legal authority. It's a very serious legal proceeding, and you may need that to protect your child. If your child is very high functioning, or is high functioning and is more independent, needs assistance, then you may want to look at what the courts call the less restrictive alternative, which are your powers of attorneys. A lot of people say, well, I need powers of attorney and a medical directive. Well, the medical directive is one of the powers of attorney. You're saying it's an agreement between two people. You don't go to court. It's an agreement between two people. And in fact, in my opinion, and most attorneys will say this, everybody needs a power of attorney, the special needs or not. Everybody needs it. If there's an emergency, you're saying in the event of an emergency, or for whatever reason I can't make the decision myself, I appoint this person to make decisions on my behalf. Married, it's usually a spouse, it can be a parent, it can be your sister, it can be your best friend, whoever you want. Medical power of attorney, there's the HIPAA release, that's consented disclosure of medical records. There's the business and financial one. There's other powers of attorney, but that's what when somebody calls me, that's what I'm looking for the guardianship. Guardianships are permanent; they can be terminated, and we see them terminated. I have a client right now, a new client that was in a horrific car wreck, was profoundly injured, but she's come along and she wants her rights restored. She wants to start managing her own affairs. She's still wheelchair bound, but mentally she's coming around. She can manage her own bank account, other things that she wants to manage on her own. So we're going to file for a restoration and have all of her rights restored and terminate the guardianship.
So I think that's key. One of the key things is, there's been a lot of talk about when is guardianship appropriate and not. And one of the things that we tell our clients is, listen, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know when you reach out to an attorney on whether or not you need guardianship or not. That is the reason you're partnering with a professional. They're going to do a lot of listening and on what your child's needs are and what their background is and everything. And they're going to talk to you about those options and here are the doors that we can walk through, and this is what makes the most sense. And in Texas, it's kind of the least restrictive, most appropriate is kind of, what the law leads to in Texas. And other states may be different, but most states are moving in that direction, right? We don't just willy-nilly give out guardianship to people that just want it but don't need it. But also I wanted to just comment, and we'll keep moving for the sake of time so we can get to this one, which is probably the most important. But I cannot stress enough to have those meaningful conversations with any aging parents or family members in your life about their powers of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. And I agree wholeheartedly that it's all our kids, not just our disabled kids. If we're sending an 18-year-old off to college, having these documents in place are important. If there's a car accident, if there's a mental health crisis, if there's all kinds of scenarios that we have heard over the past that were bad. right? There was a fire at an apartment complex at Texas State. Like, I mean, these are some examples, and kids were hauled off in ambulances and nobody knew where they went. You know, so these are examples, and hopefully they never happen. But these simple documents you can have in place, and it will help. But do talk to aging parents. Make sure that you know where their documents are. Have they been updated? Sometimes we have a loss of a parent and then the documents didn't get updated. We saw, you know, a person that had 10 people named, and all 10 of them except for one, there was one left at the bottom of the list, and to handle things, and that person happened to be 90 years old, like all the rest of the people. Gone. So anyway, you know, updating those things from time to time. So let's talk about, because we've got 10 minutes left of our meeting today. But how are we going to fund the care? And someone asked us to talk about Medicare. We are going to talk about it. So we want to preserve the eligibility for state and federally funded programs. And so the first thing first is having money in the right buckets. So for our SSI, and SSI comes with Medicaid, Social Security comes basically with Medicare. It's usually a 2-year wait, depending on if you're just retiring at that time as well. But so SSI and Medicaid, SSI is the program that we were discussing right now in the state of Texas. It's $841 a month. Other states may have higher or lower monthly stipend amounts. If your child is getting SSI and you say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not getting $841 a month, I'm getting $561 a month, you're getting a 1/3 reduction because you haven't submitted a rent agreement. Okay, so SSI is designed to pay for food and shelter. So if your child lives with you and you have not submitted a rent agreement that your child is paying rent to the Social Security Administration, they're going to reduce their monthly stipend amount of the $841 a month by 1/3, and that equals the $561. Okay. Also, with SSI, there is a reduction for working. So if your child is working and getting SSI, basically they don't count the first $85. Then they take the total gross earnings for the month and they divide by 2 and they subtract that amount from your SSI. Earnings have to be reported every month. You can report them on the portal. You can fax them in, and they'll pretend like they never get them. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But there is a portal, and you can upload your earnings to the portal. You can call. You can speak to somebody. You can mail them in. You can go into the local office to report those earnings. So that's SSI and Medicaid. So Social Security. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to hit this question really quick. Does child support counted when applying for SSI?
Yes.
Yes, and that is a very, very important. That might be one of the most important things. A lot of people, their child support continues post age 18 if they have a loved one with a disability. It is counted as income to your child, unless, Michele, it is directed to where?
Child Support Special Needs Trust, and you must get your family law attorney must be aware of this, and your family law attorney must contact an attorney like me or someone that works in this area, because family law attorneys are not up on benefits and they don't need to be. That's not their area. But they have to work together, because to get the Child Support Special Needs Trust, it has to be by court order, and you've got to make sure that your family law attorney is aware of this stuff. And if not, if you're in this area, I'm in Houston, contact me and I'll get you the names of some good attorneys, or I'll get them to Allison and she can get them to you. But there's not many family law attorneys that know how to do this.
Yes.
It has to be done correctly.
I think that's important, and we also have some consultants, like if a person is going through a divorce and they want, I suggest if you are going through that you set it up correctly on the front end, when you're trying to get that settlement taken care of, to avoid the disruption on the back end or not qualifying for SSI and Medicaid as a result of that. So let's talk about Social Security. So we've talked about SSI and Medicaid, Social Security, SSDI, Social Security Disability, RSDI, Retirement Survivors Disability Income. This is a worker-based program. So on the left-hand side, it's a means-based program. You have to be indigent. You have to be disabled. Social Security, disability, we pay into that system. Every quarter that we work, we're paying into a system. So on your Social Security statement, it tells you how many working quarters that you have, right? So along with Social Security, so you get to a point, depending on how old you are, depends on how many quarters you need to be considered fully insured or insured, right? So some of our kids are never ever going to pay into that system because our kids are never ever going to be able to work in some examples, right? So this is where you would say, well, they'll never get Social Security. And this is where we were talking about when you're applying for SSI, they also have you apply for SSDI, right? And the kid's going to get denied, rightfully so, because they haven't paid into the system. But we're going to also apply for something called Childhood Disability Benefits. And it is formally called Disabled Adult Child under a parent record, DAC. They called it that for 40 years, and they've changed the name to Childhood Disability Benefits just to confuse you. Anyway, but Childhood Disability Benefits is what it is, and this is if your child's disability started prior to age 22, then they have the ability to be covered under a parent's record for Social Security or essentially RSDI in the future. So it doesn't start right now. So if you're still in your working years as a parent, you're not retired through the Social Security Administration, you have not turned on Social Security disability benefits, your child is not going to get a benefit under your record right now. But later, when you do turn on your benefits, whether for disability or for retirement, they're going to be entitled to 50% of your amount. So let's say for instance, mom or dad, your Social Security retirement benefit is $4,000 a month. When you turn your Social Security retirement benefit on, your child will typically essentially move over from SSI to RSDI, and instead of getting $841 a month, they're going to get 50% of your benefit, and that example would be $2,000 a month, okay? Because they were qualified for Medicaid before, they will continue to be qualified for Medicaid under the Pickle Amendment. That's important to know. The Pickle Amendment will allow them to keep Medicaid. And then after 2 years, if they're over 18 when this happens, after 2 years, your child will be dual eligible for Medicare. So somebody asked about Medicare earlier. What's the difference? So Medicaid and Medicare are two very different programs. When a person flips over to Medicare, Medicare becomes the primary payer. Your group health insurance, if you have it, is the secondary payer. And Medicaid always pays last. The main thing you need to know is Medicaid always pays last. Okay, so Medicare, you're going to have A and B, which you're going to have coverage for the hospital and for the physicians. Medicaid will cover kind of the things that the Medicare didn't cover, but having that dual coverage is helpful. So Social Security, RSDI, Social Security disability comes with Medicare. Medicaid is the means-based program. Think indigent and disabled. There's 107 or 109 Medicaid programs in the state of Texas. So it's not just Medicaid through the Social Security Administration. There is Medicaid through the Social Security with the SSI program, but there are a lot of different programs out there for pregnant women, for elderly. There's a lot of different Medicaid programs out there. So I know that from a time perspective, we're really running out of time. We do have entire presentations on SSI and Medicaid, Social Security and Medicare. We've talked about the Special Needs Trust. We've kind of talked about guardianship and alternatives to guardianship. Again, entire presentations on that. But another way that we're going to fund care for our loved ones is through that Special Needs Trust. And how do we do that? It's through current assets. And a lot of times people have life insurance and the beneficiary is the Special Needs Trust. So we do what we've always done. We pay for our kids' care needs out of our current income, out of our current assets. We continue to do that in retirement. And then upon our death, because a lot of people are going to need their assets that they've saved up over the last 30 or 40 years for the 30 years that they're going to spend in retirement, upon our death, the life insurance pays the Special Needs Trust to fund the future care for our loved one. An ABLE account, so we talked about Special Needs Trust, and an ABLE account is another place that we can have money outside of the Special Needs Trust that will not be counted against the means-based test for SSI and Medicaid. Entire presentations on the YouTube channel on that. We've got some upcoming ones as well, but you can put $16,000 a year into an ABLE account, but the disability must have begun prior to age 26. It doesn't matter if you open one up after age 26, but the disability had to start prior to then. Michele, do you want to add any more on the Social Security or the Medicare, SSI, Medicaid?
Just very briefly, the benefits come from the federal government, because there was a question about what's the difference and where do, different states. The benefits come from the federal government. The federal government gives each state so much money, and then some states add in. So California adds in, but California also has income tax, high taxes. We don't have income tax in the state of Texas, so Texas doesn't add in, but it depends on the state, which is what you said before. Just to
Yes. That is true. That is true for sure. So thank you for adding that. I did see a question, Benicia, and like, who helps you apply? We do have a program that, in fact, so sometimes I say, hey, we don't have enough hours in the day to help you do like all the paperwork and everything. But what we do is we do have a program that guides you and gives you the tools. I'm an empowerment mom. I like to empower people and give them the tools and resources that they need to be successful. And I like to encourage people to say, yes, you can do it. But I'm going to give you exactly the steps that you need to take, what you need to do, what you need to say. I'm going to give you the rent agreement so that way you're getting the full amount. I'm going to tell you what not to do, how not to mess it up, and give you a kind of a step-by-step instruction. And that's one of the things that we do as National Social Security advisors. Also, another thing that I would like to mention, and I know we've got to go, we're kind of out of time for today, we do have a specialized software that is specifically designed. We take your Social Security statement, your entire earnings record, and we plug it into a system. And it tells us exactly when and how you, as the parent, should pull the trigger for your own Social Security to maximize the benefits for your entire household. Sometimes we have a parent that stayed home, they were a caregiver, and they might be drawing off of a spouse record. Sometimes we have more than one child with a disability in our household that might be drawing off records. And that software tells you exactly down to the month, dollars and cents, what the differences are going to be on how to apply for that. So we can definitely help you with that. You guys have asked a lot of good questions. I know we're out of time for today. We've got Michele's contact information on here. Reach out. If you need legal services, reach out. If you're in an area, much further away than Houston, we do have referral sources and other, other attorneys that we can refer you to all over the state of Texas. We can definitely help you for that. But if you are at a point where you're saying, I know I need help and I don't know where to start, put it on your list to reach out. We can help you. We can help you get started. And I don't think anybody is ever here to rain on any good planning that you've already done. Maybe you already have a will. Maybe it needs to be reviewed. Maybe you already did a plan, but it's been a lot of years and it needs to be revisited. We can help you with all of those things, even if you have other professionals in your life that are not nuanced and special needs. So I would just like to thank everybody for their time today. Thank you for asking great questions. And Benicia, thank you again for partnering with us today. As always, Michele, you're a rock star, and we love partnering with you. So everybody will get an email later today with the slides and the recording. And thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.